Difficult as a THL grower to focus on a lot of the positives because of the business rescue process. So it's detracted quite a lot from our enthusiasm, if you want to call it that, in wanting to leverage off the positives, because you're concerned that it may not come to fruition. There's worries about whether you get paid retention at the end of the year. Luckily we did this year, so that was great. But yeah, the crop, the RV price, last year's crop we were down in Felixton area, up to 25% for a lot of the guys on the dry land side. But the price in essence offset that. So from a positive perspective, that's probably the extent of it. Not much. Is the business rescue process, and that has been ongoing for so long, and it creates a lot of uncertainty for everybody. And part of that process, even though the business rescue practitioners have insisted that the mills have had the required capex and the funding for off-season maintenance, the mills haven't performed. Certainly Felixton hasn't performed. And the poor milling performance has resultantly detracted in cane quality, and it's taken a lot of money out of growers' pockets. So that has been a challenge in that sense. Because we were in a semi-drought season, the volume of cane that had to be crushed had decreased, but they weren't able to crush it in the originally anticipated period. So we ended up crushing, I think, for almost a month longer than we should have. But it was because of slow crushes and delays, burn to crush delays, that we saw the RV average for the mill not being as good as it should have, and ultimately that reduces the share of the pot that the Felixton grower community is putting into the SASA pie and the ultimate revenue that we would have got as growers. So that's decreased. So they've worked really hard this off season to try and mitigate all of those issues, and they're promising that things will improve, and we can only hope that comes to fruition. We're starting late this year at the end of April, and to crush the crop that we've put in as an estimate, by the end of November they've got to perform at a seriously good efficiency rate as a mill to achieve it, and the jury's out on whether it's achievable or not, but we'll see. Yeah, climate last year, 24-25, was a challenge. Our long-term average here is sort of around about 1,000 mils, 950 to 1,1, depending on where you are in Felixton area. In the Mpangeni area, we only had 720 mils for the year. So dryland-wise, a lot of us were down around about 25%. Irrigated guys weren't impacted that much, but irrigated is a small percentage of the overall cane supply to Felixton. So the mill supply was down. That's been mitigated this coming year by way above average rainfall. So we're already close to 800 mils in 3.5 months for the season. So I think we've got the opposite, where we might have problems with roots standing in water and maybe some leaching of fertilizer in more sandier areas, which might have a negative impact, but in general the crop's going to be up. So the mill should crush 10-15% more than last year. So in a drought year, it usually increases because the cane's more stressed, so your RV percentages would normally increase to a point, and then the cane gets beyond stressed and you start having dextran issues that they complain about at the mill, and so there was a drop off in quality towards the end of the season. But how much of that can be attributed to the climate and how much to the very slow milling crush performance, it would need some expert to tell us that. So not easy to quantify. Unfortunately for us, with January, February, it's such a hot period. If you get poor rainfall in February with those heat, there's really hot summer's days, it impacts very negatively, which is what happened. So February, March, April, we didn't get good rain at all. A lot ongoing in our area from a mining EIA perspective, which we have concerns around. Jindal Mining, which is a proposed iron ore project up in the Monmouth Hills, which there are very serious concerns around pollution of the Khurucho Dam, which is the entire Klatuzi catchment's water supply. So not only for the city, but for irrigated growers, it's the entire water supply. So that's a big concern at the moment, and whether that EIA process is going to be a positive outcome for the mining guys, and whether there's going to be actual mining implementation or not. We obviously anti it as cane growers, and especially the irrigated guys. I think a sustained RV price in the levels that it is at the moment is very welcome, and it makes farming a lot easier. I believe that most sugarcane farmers should be in a pretty strong positive cash flow situation after the last sort of 3 years of good prices, and if that continues, then it is something to really look forward to, and a good crop as well, which we should look at having at least an average crop this year, 2025, 2026. So the business rescue process itself may not have contributed to mindset changes around area under cane. So I think areas that have gone out of cane to macadamias would have been a strategic diversification strategy from growers. It wouldn't have been driven necessarily by the business rescue process. Where I do have a concern is the land reform process. It's definitely having a material impact on Felixton cane supply area. So I think it's going to be up to Tonga Units Limited / Vision, whatever they call it in the future. They're going to have to party with government and potentially other third parties to try and facilitate the continuity in farms that are being transferred through land reform, that are going to communities and they're going out of production, or there's been a massive decrease in production which is negatively impacting cane supply. That's a concern. I think Tonga Units does have a view that they want to get more involved, and there are areas that have basically gone fallow that they want to look at from a replant program perspective, getting government involved, getting communities involved, and trying to plant up areas that have become redundant. And around Epangeni, Felixton area, there are a lot of land claims that are currently being negotiated, and government at one stage was reluctant to look at leasing farms back to the previous commercial grower owners. So a lot of them that have been transferred have gone out of production. So the cane supply is dwindling. It is a concern. So from a long-term mill sustainability perspective, that has to somehow, with DARD's involvement, the milling companies, they've got to try and turn it around. Between 2,500 and 3,000 hectares going inland from Epangeni, so the old Heatonville, Koleni areas that have gone out of sugar production through land reform. So those, basically, they're just grassland, a lot of them now. So there is opportunity for the milling companies and or other third parties to get involved potentially and look at some sort of replant program to get those areas productive again. But it would come at a huge cost because the majority of those farms were irrigated, so the infrastructure would all have to be re-established. It's important that Malmouth is kept sustainable, so that interventions happen there to make sure that before it's too late that those farms don't go out of production. but yeah, I won't say that. But yeah, it's so a lot of challenges, more challenges than positives at the moment. And I think if THL comes out of the business rescue process successfully, like it's supposed to, June, maybe July this year, and we can see some positive moves towards improving cane supply in the area and the long-term sustainability of the mill, it might make other growers that have got more marginal areas think about planting up more cane. And certainly with the price where it is, it's worth investing in cane. You're getting a good return as long as that RV price holds. That's the big thing. I don't know where we are as an industry in terms of the sugar industry master plan. I don't know what's happened there. Has it stagnated? Where are we with sustainable aviation fuel and all those discussions? And are we going to have to keep paying in as commercial growers into the transformation funding model, which we've been forced to do without the actual master plan coming into effect? So if we're not going to see alternative sources of revenue, are we just going to have to keep paying to keep things going because transformation is seen as a necessary part of doing business?
rights, the Felixton team did very well. We received, as Chairman Mr. Greg Nelson mentioned, RDC flood relief for the previous 2023-2024 season. They did very well in setting up a guideline of Mthombo agricultural finance funding, and where the funds were held for all the farmers, and the project worked out very well that way, mitigated the risk quite substantially. So, yeah. We also had a sugar macadamia festival in Mtazini, which was quite nice, that the team from Umfolozi down to Maidstone all came together to showcase SA cane growers, our services and the sugar industry as a whole. So the transformation funding, we changed the way that we structure payment out of the transformation money from SASSA. That was rolled out, it was approximately 50-60 million through all the regions. What we did is divided up to about 5 to 6 odd million per region, or 4 to 6 million, and that's now through especially the Zululand North Coast. Each area got around 5 million, which they have especially Maidstone, Amatikulu and Felixton dedicated solely to sea cane to improve the better quality certified sea cane for small growers, to obviously as a knock-on result improve their quality and profitability. Not entirely, just obviously the challenges with both the mill and Tongaat's business rescue. The one I'm not sure if Thomas will talk about quite a bit extensively is our promotion of Shesha and getting involved with that and getting that up and running. That was a fantastic project, and it's very exciting to see the demand and the interest in the product. We weren't obviously sure how it would turn out, and it's been an exciting project at the Zinkwazi farm. With that general eye in mind, that impact, as Greg Nelson mentioned, is substantial. It started right at the source of the dam and goes an entire under-twos right up to the Richards Bay. So what we've done is not only objected on behalf of Felixton Cane Growers Association, we actually have a number of other agriculture associations that have also teamed up with us. In addition to our objections, we have an environmental firm of attorneys who are come on board pro bono in assisting all of us with a very comprehensive objection to that. It's a bittersweet one, because the local community, certain members of the local community are insistent that it will help stimulate the economy and bring more revenue to their Malmouth area, because it is struggling, the Malmouth area, both in terms of land reform, farms decimated, loss of area under cane, however, to the detriment of the rest of the users along that under-twos water system. So they were rejected at first. The department rejected their claim for the application for mining rights. Now they have submitted again, and now we're going through the EIA process as well. As I mentioned, our objection pokes quite a lot of holes in what they request, along with even the Richards Bay Clean Air Association, also one of the parties that also went back, setting out that the application was lacking. My role is quite varied. Obviously I assist a lot with the legal too, as well as with Shesha. So a lot of it to do with production, dealing with canneries and printers. Then obviously try and focus on the Felixton area, the Matikulu area too. Luckily we've appointed Malabongwe, who's great, but still giving him a lot of guidance and assistance. And then with Felixton, our staff members here focus on the areas like mining rights and water rights. A lot of issues with water and the Department of Water that I've been busy with, also along the legal route now, to try and object to the prescribed charges essentially. Of course, and especially the Matikulu and Felixton areas have almost the most amount per area of small-scale growers, and they're also the lifeblood of the communities, and so they impacted tremendously, especially with the mill performance issues, Tonga's business rescue process. So they impacted quite severely. So we give quite a lot of support where we can in terms of obviously advice and farming practices, as well as with projects like sugarcane to financial assistance and grant funding where we can, with either DARD as well as the IPC. Yeah, it's definitely it's rewarding to make an impact with the growers. And as I say, even though they don't have the volume of cane, it's it's great to see them improve their RV, understand how the RV systems work, start implementing best farming practices, and that's where especially our agricultural business advisors are very involved, as they normally dedicate most of their time to small-scale growers. Yes, especially wherever along those mining areas and the water use. So we have quarterly general meetings where we do updates, as well as numerous WhatsApp groups where I send constant updates on various issues, and almost daily, sometimes too much on them. So they do appreciate the updates and forms, and in fact we sometimes don't have meetings because there's nothing more to discuss. Everyone's advised, informed and happy, which is also a good thing. Well, that's good, and it's good to have them informed, and especially with meetings with them, we often have constant grower days out in fields with both SASRI and ourselves, and it's all about uplifting in education and ensuring that they're informed and knowledgeable, because that also, once again, the better their caners and the more they understand, the better it helps the whole industry with the RV system. We've had one or two minor outbreaks, longhorn beetle, which seem to have been isolated, and no further issues. I think that funny enough was in the Malmouth area. But other than that, it's been relatively under control. Our pest and disease teams here seem to do quite a good job for SASRI. That's not always the case in every region, but they seem to be doing a good job. And same thing, constant updates in the fields. SASRI, as far as I know, have got a new system as well that tracks the movement of their pest and disease teams, so they can, they've currently now also take the old Dana from the growers' fields and actually keep it and send it back to their own lab so they can test to see what chemicals, etc., can use to eradicate the old Dana. Climate change, we obviously noticed it was a very dry season last year. The yields for all growers, obviously countrywide, dropped, and especially Felixton was one of the harder hits because it's mainly dry land. So it wasn't great after the floods of the previous year to a very, very dry season to, as Mr. Nelson mentioned earlier, a very, very wet summer now. Besides the rolling out of the Shesha energy drink, that's a very exciting one, as well as, yes, the SASA transformation initiative, to see that work out. Obviously, just a little more feedback on that is that it's obviously a SAFTA representative, the cane growers representative, and the miller that have to unanimously agree on anything for that project. So it makes it very interesting, as well as the intention of that project is to, after the first year initially, is to review and assess whether that had an impact of that money, to see that money that's been spent, of all growers' money, is actually going to genuine transformations initiatives and to uplift the industry as a whole. Hopefully it dries out a bit, but already we've noticed a remarkable growth spurt in cane. So I think if the mill can crush the cane, it's going to be a bumper crop and a very good year. So obviously we are purely sugarcane, but we do lend support where we can. Obviously there's a lot of crossover with sugarcane and Max. So we try and stay up to date, or myself up to date on Max and the requirements and the different companies doing it, and a broader knowledge of macadamias. It's one of the main diversified sort of agricultural products that has been done, especially in the Felixton area. Small amount of bananas in certain areas, but it's not really dry land, Zululand is not ideal for when we see fruits, etc. However, more up inland, we see that they've diversified with a number of different citruses and fruits, etc. Both in Matakula and Felixton, it was quite way off. It was probably about 15% a drop from the beginning of the season to the end. That's also what one of our exciting projects we're dealing with, I'm sure the other guys would have mentioned, is the GIS project will hopefully address, so that especially area under cane. So that was, last year the drop was a little bit, the reason was the extreme weather conditions. So that's paid a big toll in the extreme drop. Say if it was just a little bit, we could have just said it's the extreme weather. However, growers is often a wrestling match to get them to not lose allocation, but also give accurate estimates. And some of the time we find that some of the growers don't know their farms as well. They aren't aware of how much area they actually even have under cane. And then once again, it's actually your yields, what you're getting per cane. Some of the impact was also due to the business rescue, especially in these areas, because growers were reluctant to put fertilizer, or they did it too late. They didn't ripen, so that once again also had a knock-on effect on dropping the estimates of the area under cane was there. However, the yields wasn't what was forecast in the beginning of last year, especially with our GIS system, and working hand in hand with SASA and SASRI. We definitely encourage it. We also have the SUSFarm system, which implements a big thing for farmers, because now they're reluctant to even open their computers, and now they're doing these checklist tools to help them with better farming practices. And also the mills eventually will require some form of verification. So that's quite critical for us for the future of farming, especially sugarcane farming. Yes, we've definitely seen a large increase in most of the areas, especially out in Felixton and Matikulu. I actually know one of the drone operators, so they've been very busy with the application. That's starting to become more cost effective versus obviously flight spraying or hand